Empathic people like to give to other people, and narcissists can smell them out. It's like shark bait to a shark. When someone wants to give, they want to take, and they can abuse those relationships. So my wife woke up one morning and said, "You know what? I want to have keepers in my life." And when she told me this, keeper is an acronym. It basically stands for you have to get rid of two E's. One is envy and ego because you don't want them in your life. And then you're left with kind, peaceful, empathetic, and respectful. And my wife said, these are the people I want in my life. And when she came up with that acronym, because I use a lot of acronyms in all my classes, I said, this is a great idea for a book.
This is episode number 684 with Daniel Ratner. We're going to be talking today about how to protect yourself from emotional vampires. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Weiner. I'm a certified dating and relationship coach. And every week I bring you expert advice and real conversations about love, connection, and how to have healthy relationships. At Last First Date Radio, we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And so for more information on my coaching programs, my 3 books, and my several courses, go to lastfirstdate.com. And before I bring Daniel on, I just want to give you a quick shout out to my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date. It's for women over 40 who are looking for positive support. We have many groups out there who are not very positive and not very actually hands-on. And this group is so hands-on with 7 monitors, and I'm in there all the time. I do live videos there. So join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Daniel Ratner. He's a relationship coach, a speaker, and an author. He helps people build healthier connections by recognizing draining patterns and setting stronger boundaries. I love that. He's a former entrepreneur turned personal growth expert, and he's the author of a few books, Infinite Marriage and the 10 Secrets to a Passionate Marriage, and the upcoming book, Emotional Vampires, which teaches people how to protect their happiness from toxic people. And I'm sure we all know a few of those through
Oh,
his
we do.
coaching. Through his coaching and his books and public talks, he provides clear, practical tools for improving self-esteem, cultivating people who are keepers, and creating relationships that fuel joy. I love it. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. I came upon the term emotional vampires many years ago, and it's such a great description for the people who you don't want in your life. But I'm not going to explain what it is. I want you to, so we can hear what you have to say.
An emotional vampire is someone that really drains you of energy. And we all have them in our life. And what I did in this upcoming book is I made them into about 12 different categories. Uh, the, the perpetual victim, the narcissist, the socially awkward, the drama queen. I have a whole chapter on brothers, sisters, parents, and in-laws because they have a different kind of relationship with us. Overly dependent, nonstop talkers, terrible twos, teenagers, emotionally constipated, and drama queens. And these are all different people we have in our life that drain our energy. And the reason why I ended up writing this book, we host a lot of people to our house for meals on Friday nights. And we had this one woman who was coming, and my wife was coaching her and helping her along. She was single, about 40 years old, beautiful woman. She's been divorced. And she would spend hours on the phone with my wife, like for years. And I finally said, my wife, this is ridiculous. She's draining all your energy. You're not a therapist. You're not getting paid for this. And one Friday night, my wife and her got into a little tiff. My wife got very upset. And after about a few weeks of thinking about it, she said, you know what? This woman is a narcissist. And the reason why we figured that out, because we're what we call empathics, my wife and I, we like to give. Empathic people like to give to other people. And narcissists can smell them out. It's like shark bait to a shark. When someone wants to give, they want to take, and they can abuse those relationships. So my wife woke up one morning and said, "You know what? I want to have keepers in my life." And when she told me this, keeper is an acronym. It basically stands for you have to get rid of two E's. One is envy and ego because you don't want them in your life. And then you're left with kind, peaceful, empathetic, and respectful. And my wife said, these are the people I want in my life. And when she came up with that acronym, because I use a lot of acronyms in all my classes, I said, this is a great idea for a book. And so I started writing the book Emotional Vampires. And And the reason, because I teach a lot about relationships, and we have different relationships in our life. We have relationships with ourselves, our self-esteem. We have relationships with our spouses or our boyfriends or girlfriends, and we have relationships as parents and child. And then we have relationships with people in our life, like our friends and our family. And I like to say, you're only as happy as your worst relationship. And I want to help people in all sorts of relationships. And it's having clarity about, who makes you happy and who doesn't. Because if you don't put a fence around your happiness, I mean, you're the only one that can do that. You have to protect yourself. And we have people in our lives that drain us of energy. And we have to know how to handle them. We have to also decide if we have to have them in our life. Like Sandy, do you have a lot of friends?
No, actually. I used to have a lot of friends, and I started becoming more discerning as I got older about who
Right.
who actually shows up, who doesn't,
Yeah, that's
who's
right.
there in a
Yeah.
crisis, who
Yeah.
isn't. And my group of friends became very small. We have inner circles, and then we have,
Mhm.
acquaintances. I think it goes for dating and for friendships and how we react to family. I have a brother who I don't talk to anymore because he
Oh,
crossed boundaries too many times. So I like that you included family in there. So, Daniel, why do you think so many of us tolerate these kinds of emotional vampires, people who drain us?
I think the reason is because we don't realize that we can actually do something to protect ourselves. We have no clarity of the fact that we control our happiness, and that a lot of times, in fact, one of the chapters I have is called the friendship audit. It means you have to go through your friends you have in your life and decide, why do I have this person in my life? First of all, most of your friends came from either an event or an experience. For example, you went to, or circumstance, you went to school with them, they were in your class, your parents were friends, they were neighbors, and you didn't really choose your friends. They just became friends because out of circumstance. And I think, and some of those friends you had when you're 15, 16 years old, they were, and you enjoyed their company. Now you're, 45, 55 years old and you're still friends with them. Maybe they drain you of energy. And you have to decide, is the price of admission worth it to still be friends with them? Maybe it's not worth it to relive those childhood memories that I had. Or, and I think as you age, as you said yourself, I think as you get older and wiser, you realize you want to be more careful of who you spend your time with, because you realize that most people you have in your life really aren't your friends, they're more acquaintances. And so, if you don't have to have in your life, there are ways to get them out of your life. But if you do, for example, you might have a boss or a brother or sister, or it might be someone who's a donor of yours or someone's a big client, and you have to have them in your life. How do you make that relationship healthy? And one of the keys is to redefine the word healthy. I also have a brother who, drains me of energy a bit. He's a sweet guy and I love him, but I can only handle so much time with him. And I've decided that, me and him going to lunch together is not a good thing for me. So for me, a healthy relationship is basically, being on the phone once every 6 months or twice a year, you know. And I was coaching this couple one time in Brooklyn, and they were in their late 30s, and they said that they wanted to get married. They never been married before, and their parents hated each other. The parents hated each other from some business deal. And they said, "What should we do?" I said, "You should get married and move out of town." They go, "What about, honoring our parents?" I go, "You know what? You have to redefine the word healthy." And it might just be seeing them once a year. It might on a holiday. It might just be talking on the phone once a month. Obviously, what's going to happen is once you have kids, those two parents are going to like calm down, probably, most likely, hopefully, and you'll have a better relationship. But in the meantime, it might mean that you can't spend as much time. Your definition of healthy is not what you think it is.
Yeah, I mean, both my parents were not easy people to be around. And I remember my sister has said to me recently that she was calling my mother almost every day and it was draining her. And I said to
Oh,
her, "So why do you have to call her every day?" It's just like,
exactly.
it sounds so simple, but she stopped. She's calling her every few days now, and because she felt guilty. And I think a lot of people, when they set those boundaries, they do feel guilty. But a lot of times you're talking to people, especially family members or people who are harder to just get rid of, and
No, you can't.
they, right, you can't,
Or you
well,
can, or you can, and
you
it's up to
can.
you, right? I don't think it's healthy to get rid of them. I think it's healthier just to come to terms with them that they have. They might have issues, you might have issues, and they just it's okay just to call them for, 10 minutes a year and just keep the relationship going. You don't have to be
Hmm.
close friends with them.
Right. I think a lot of people think it's all or nothing. And I
Yeah.
have one of those friends who I met when I was 18 who no longer is showing up for me. I have to be honest also, like, why am I spending time with somebody who is draining me? Is it okay every 6 months? Maybe, so I think we have to make those choices.
People would want to go to lunch with me to, for fundraising purposes and stuff. And after a while, I'm like, lunch, when I was living in Maryland, it's a 2-hour ordeal. By the time you drive to a restaurant, meet with them, like, I just want to eat lunch and come home. Like, I don't, if I went to a restaurant and I was working, like, I'd sit down, I said, give me the bill now. I pay, I eat in 10 minutes, I go home. I don't want to waste my time. I'm like, no, I'm
Mhm.
wasting my time, but like, I've become more conscious of my time and who I spend my time with.
Right.
And I'm careful with that. I could be a little, I guess some people might find it off-putting. But see, when you're 20, in your teens and 20s and 30s, you want to be friends with everybody because you're young and you need to feel connected because we all have low self-esteem and we want to feel connected. We want to have friends. And now that you're in your 40s and 50s, I don't need so many friends in my life. You know, I think just as you age, you get smarter and it's smarter with your time. You
Right.
know,
Time is limited. It's
it's
a
funny.
resource you can't get back.
I've done recently in the last 2 months, I've done two singles events. I've spoken at two singles events for men and women 50 plus.
Mm,
And I've left both of those experiences thinking to myself that there are people in this world, and maybe you might disagree with me, but I think there are people who are not meant to be married.
mm, for sure.
You know, some people say, "Oh, there's someone for everyone." Like, I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. I think there are, and they have, and I wrote a class based on this when I left one of my speeches. I said it's called From Swipe Right to Wedding Night: How to Make Yourself Irresistibly Marriageable. Because a lot of people have no idea what it takes to be. I don't call myself a matchmaker, even though I do set people up. I call myself a mate maker. I want to turn people into a person that someone can be in love with and want to spend time with.
Hmm.
And, unfortunately, as you age, it's harder to find a mate because for a number of reasons. One is especially for a woman, because the men are less, just don't have the drive to want to be married. And number two, you as an older person, older than in your 20s and 30s, you recognize narcissism. You recognize someone has a no awareness. You recognize someone that doesn't pay attention to you. You recognize someone who doesn't make you feel safe. You recognize people who cross boundaries. And because you have so much more awareness now than you did when you're whatever you got married, 22 years old, it's harder to find somebody.
It's definitely harder to find someone, but there are social skills and dating skills and relationship skills that can be taught.
Oh, yes.
And some people can learn them well and apply them. I mean, as simple as how we ask follow-up questions
Yeah.
instead of letting a conversation die. Also, how we present our story. I mean, I talk to people all the time who overshare on a first date, to tell their whole wounded life story, right? It's one of the biggest turnoffs.
But you know what? I call that lack of awareness.
Yeah.
When someone comes to you and you're on a date and they're telling you some sort of story and they can't read the social clues that you're bored out of your mind, right? And that is a missing piece that people have. Like, you can't be married to that. They
Hmm.
have no awareness of your feelings, no awareness of your time. No, they don't respect. There's no respect of how they're using your time. That's hard to be in a relationship with.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think with the world today, with social media and quick texting and not really practicing our communication skills, it is much harder to date in many ways. We have a 2-second attention span. We could get into all that, but let's go back to emotional vampires because that's the topic of the day. That I obviously both of us do the same kind of work and could talk about dating forever. But let's just say that you meet somebody who is an emotional vampire, let's say on a date. Do you think that people like that can change?
Yes, I think some emotional vampires are some of the categories are much more dangerous. For example, the narcissist. That is a very dangerous. Now you can have narcissistic tendencies, which you can handle, or you might have full NPD, which is narcissistic personality disorder. which is very difficult, and you're going to get stuck in this. And the reason why it's dangerous is because someone who's empathetic, who wants to give, who loves sharing, who loves opening up their emotions and taking in people's emotions, they want to give. And when a narcissist latches onto them, they want to take. And so the giver feels good giving and giving until they find out that there's no reciprocity. And by then, you might have already fallen in love with somebody. And the thing with narcissists is they're very charismatic and they trap people in. I have what I call narcissist radar out now. When I see a man who's 45 years old and been divorced once or twice, I'm like, I'm just like, oh man, because I think it has become worse in our society with social media, that people become much more self-absorbed with themselves.
Hmm.
But like another category I think is not as bad is, let's say, the drama queen. Someone who overshares everything, overplays everything. That is not as bad because you can handle that. I personally like to be drama adjacent in my life because I like people with drama. I don't want to be married to them, but I like having my life because they're exciting. Another category I have is called emotional constipation. This is someone who has a hard time sharing their feelings and accepting your feelings. Now, you can date them, you can handle it, but what happens, you're married to someone for 5, 10 years, and especially for a woman who needs that emotional connection. And when her husband is not opening themselves up, not receiving her emotions and not sharing his own emotions, it's not a passionate marriage. It's
Hmm.
not. And what happens is the physicality starts to slow down. And next thing you know, 5, 10 years later, they get divorced. And the reason why is because there's a lack of sharing of emotions. I mean, in a relationship, this is, now again, this is my opinion. Women need to have someone who's no, they need to connect emotionally to somebody to have a passionate relationship. And when you have what I call constipation, you can't share your emotions, it's going to be a hard marriage. The other category I talk about is really socially awkward people. These are people who, um, in my make yourself irresistibly marriageable class, I talk about like just learning to say, "Hi, my name is Daniel. What is yours? Where are you from?" The first question you ask is where you're from because you can always make a connection like that. If you ask, "What do you do?" You might not have a job. You may hate your job. Whatever it is. At least when you say where you're from, you can start a connection off with talking to somebody. At least be somewhat normal. There are a lot of people I have noticed, especially men in their 40s and 50s and 60s, who have Asperger's.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with this?
Sure.
You meet a lot of men like this?
I meet a lot of people like this, but I'm not sure if we're being overdiagnosed or not.
Well, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with Asperger's because I've met plenty of people that have it. It's when you don't realize you have it that
Hmm.
the issue comes. Because I have plenty of people in my life who have Asperger's, and I'm good friends with them, and I enjoy their company. It's when you don't realize you have it or refuse to admit that you have it, and your first line in the conversation is your top 10 Dungeons and Dragons game because you don't realize that that is a socially awkward thing to talk about with tech. It's funny in my book I talk about maybe I'm the weird one. Maybe everyone else is socially normal and I'm the actually awkward one. I don't know. Maybe it's true. But we all have some sort of, not everybody, but like some sort of issue in social situations. And but learning if you know you have some, difficulties, just having common sense to ask certain questions and to engage with people and to listen to them. Listening is a key in relationships. It really is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, we're talking like first dates where somebody shows up and doesn't stop talking about themselves. And it can be interpreted as somebody who's self-centered, somebody who has no social awareness. There's a lot of ways that we can judge that. Or we could interpret it as nervousness. And how do we know the difference? So, what would you advise people who are on a date with a nonstop talker?
So I had this problem one time. I was in my early 20s and I went with a woman, beautiful sweetheart, and she wouldn't stop talking. I really thought I was on a TV show called Candid Camera. I'm like, how can someone talk this much? It's not possible. I couldn't get a word in edgewise. She just, and looking back now, I think it was nervousness. Thank God she got married, poor guy. Hope he has a good set of noise canceling headphones. But she's very sweet. I think she's just being very nervous. And now that, listen, unfortunately, wisdom comes with age, right? And if I had that wisdom earlier on, I probably would have given her a second chance.
Mhm. I advise people to interrupt the conversation because what happens is the other person gets drained and resentful and just writes them off and judges them. I think you can tell a lot by the interruption. So if you kindly interrupt, gently put your hand on their forearm, do something where you just say, "May I interrupt you for a moment here?" Especially if they're talking about the past, so somebody who's talking about all their exes and how
Yeah.
horrible their marriages were, well, that gives you a lot of good information. But
Yeah.
um, that's a different category altogether. But if somebody's just talking, forgets to ask you. So I was on a date like this once, and the guy, he himself realized that he wasn't stopping. And so he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been talking all this time. What do you do?" So I told him what I did, and I just say life coach. And he immediately turned it around and interrupted me again and said, "I'm a life coach too," which he was not. And he considered himself a life coach. He also was name dropping and telling me about all these famous people that he
So
knew.
funny you mentioned that
Why?
because I have in my I have a book on self-esteem called Never Feeling Loved Again. Symptoms and strategies to self-esteem, to low self-esteem. In the middle part of the book, I talk about ways in which you can cause other people to feel bad about themselves. And one of them is called name dropping.
Mm-hmm.
You do that in order to raise our esteem of ourselves in front of somebody else. And usually when we do that, we're naming someone who's a celebrity or someone famous, and and the reason why it comes across a little bit fraudulent is because you might have a very small connection with them, but you're using that connection in order to make yourself seem higher in the eyes of somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to do this years ago. Now I'm aware, of course, I don't do it anymore. But we do name dropping. We do what's called, oh, you don't know so and so? This one bugs me. Oh, you don't know, Joe Goldberg? Oh, everyone knows Joe. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know him. We have different circles. I don't know everybody. I don't know all the celebrities. I'm not involved. It's not my thing I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes people feel bad about themselves. And once
Yeah.
you become aware of other people's happiness, you become more aware of your own happiness.
Yeah, and you don't have to prove anything to anyone. I think it's
Right.
that
Right.
overselling. And the truth is that I've met a ton of celebrities because I was married to a celebrity. And Um, I had never talk about it. I just don't. I don't care. It never really meant a whole lot to me. And in fact, the more celebrities you meet, the less impressive it is. And you
I
realize
know.
they're just people. I mean, they're people, and
They
some of
are.
them are despicable and some of them are lovely. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't define myself by the people I know. I define myself by my actions, my values, who I've become as a person, not who I used to be. I think
Yeah.
that those are qualities I look for in people, is not, you're not trying to prove something to me by your accomplishments, but by who you are as a person, how you show up in the world. And so not everybody can do that or has the self-confidence to do that. But I would expect at this stage in life, especially dating older, that you are who you are, that you're not going to really change a whole lot. And this is who you are.
I teach a lot of young students in their 20s. They want to get married and they ask me dating questions. Well, is he going to change? And like, I go, you get what you get and you don't get upset. You hope
Mm-hmm.
they change. You want them to grow and become better people, but you can't expect them to change. You can't expect them to change.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I like to make the distinction between somebody's behavior and their character.
Yeah.
You can change behavior, you can't change character,
Yeah.
and the wisdom to know the difference. And so even in that interruption thing I was talking about, if you interrupt somebody in the middle of their nonstop talking, if they get angry at you, that's character. If
Yeah.
they apologize and have self-awareness and stop and then ask you about yourself, that's a beautiful behavior. So we can tell a lot by people when we start to speak up, when we start to assert ourselves. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com last first date to learn more and claim this offer. Let's go back to the emotional vampires for a minute. And you've
Sure.
mentioned a couple of categories. What are some of the other common categories?
Well, I threw in terrible twos and teenagers as parents. And the reason why I threw in terrible twos is because if you've ever raised children, you know there's a time in their life when they're about 2.5 years old. And the reason I'm going to tell you this because it can relate to other parts of our life. When they go nuts, you've seen them on the mall, the floor of a mall screaming, that you can't console them, right? They're 3 years old, 2.5 years old. And the reason why, when babies come out, when you have a baby, you decide when they're going to eat, who they're going to play with, when they're going to go to sleep, what they're going to wear. Everything's decided for them. But sometime around 2.5, they start to have this awareness that they can make decisions. And since they have no way to make a decision, they go crazy. It's almost like being stuck in a dead-end job for an adult where you have to have the paycheck, but you can't quit, but you hate the job. That's what they feel like, but they don't know how to vent their emotions, so they scream. So what I teach in the book is that you have to give them a choice. They have to feel like that they have a choice in life, that they have options. The example I use is my daughter was about 3 years old, and I went to get her pajamas, and she started throwing a fit. She went to the pajamas. She threw them on the bed, whatever. So I took them away. I went and got two other pairs of pajamas. And I said, "Do you want these pink, balloon pajamas or these red fireman pajamas?" And she grabbed one and she ran out of the room. And she put it on. She was fine. And that's because I gave her an option in life. And this is an issue like if you're in business or negotiating, that sometimes when you give someone an option, even though that you made the choice of those two options, they feel like they have some sort of control in life.
Mhm.
Like when you're dating, for example, you have a guy who wants to, has a certain has allergies to certain foods, and there's only certain restaurants he can go to, or he's picky, and you say, "How about we go to this one or this one?" That way, you feel like you gave him the choices, but like he feels like he has some control.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of
Um,
times a man will ask a woman out and say, I'm going to take you for Italian food at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. And she's like, no, I hate Italian food and I'm not available on Tuesday. So
right.
it's just cutting down his choices.
You give her an option.
He should give her options, but also she can lead with appreciation. And she can
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
thank you so much. I love Italian food. I'm available Wednesday. Does that work for you? So it's a
sure.
dialogue. It's not a monologue. It's not we're doing this. But I
Yeah,
think a lot of times, or a man, this comes up a lot, even in people in their 60s. A man says, you tell me where you want to go. And she gets mad that he's not a planner. And I say to her, there are other ways of looking at this. He is trying to make you happy. And he wants to know, especially if he's coming from a distance and doesn't know your neighborhood, cut him some slack and
right.
appreciate and have a perspective of he is giving you choices. So we
Yeah,
tend to judge and write off and make up stories when we don't know what the truth is.
yeah, yeah. It's fun. It's funny you say that because I know women who are annoyed when the man doesn't plan the date,
Mm-hmm.
and it can go both ways. I guess if they're coming from out of town, they should, listen. Today you can just Google and find out all the restaurants in the neighborhood. Now it's pretty easy, but he should say to you, he should do the research. Say, hey, there's two great restaurants near you. Which one do you like better? That would be the,
Mm-hmm.
the way that to make everything smooth. That he gives her a choice, but he made the effort to make sure he found the restaurants in the neighborhood. And by the way, as a woman, I would say that she likes the fact that he went out of her way to make an effort to find out what these restaurants are. I
Right.
mean, I don't know as a single woman that you would say, "Oh, where do you want to go?" Like, can you put any effort in? You want a guy to make effort, right? I think,
Right. But he's already traveling. He's willing to come to her neighborhood. Yes, he
yeah,
could Google if she says, I like
yeah,
Italian. He could Google and say, here are two choices. But like, we don't need to play these games or write somebody off and, for those reasons, for sure. There's lots of other reasons.
I have a concept called the three-date rule.
Hmm.
The date rule states that you should at least give someone three chances because you don't know someone after one date. I mean, you cannot know someone after one date. Like you talked about being nervous on the first date. I remember I was in my 20s and I would date women, especially the prettier they were, the more nervous I was. I
Hmm.
wouldn't go to a pasta place or pizza place. I'd go to a place that had a salad, and I'd order salad out. without dressing because the dressing can get up my collar. Forget the avocados that causes gas. Forget carrots get stuck in my teeth. If I'm ordering plain lettuce, right, on a first date, are you going to get to know me on the first date? Is it possible to know me? No, it's not. And so many women, didn't give me a second chance. And I did the same thing because I had no wisdom going into a relationship.
Right. And we're trying to
Yep.
keep ourselves safe. We don't want to make bad choices.
I, what's the biggest decision you're going to make in your life?
Who you marry?
Who you marry?
Hmm.
How many people take classes? How many people read books? Have a dating coach or someone to guide them through the dating process and the marriage process. And most
Yeah.
people don't. Most people don't do this. And this is why you spend more time getting a driver's license. You spend more time studying to be a CPA or a lawyer or attorney, whatever it is, than you do learning about the biggest decision you're making in your life. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's really nuts. And this is why if you take 100 marriages in the world today, how many get divorced?
Right. And even the ones who don't get divorced are not necessarily happy.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get you the answer, me. If you take 100 marriages today in the regular world, 100 marriages today in America, how many get divorced?
Like 50.
Okay. Of the 50 are gone. So you have 100 marriages today, 50 are out the window. You have 50 marriages left. How many of them do you think are in passionate, happy, loving relationships?
5.
Five. That means you marry today, you have a one out of 20, 2.5% chance of having a happy marriage. Everyone walking down the aisle thinks we're in love and they think they're going to be in love forever. Do you know why? Because love at this point in time at 20, 25, 30 years old is easy. It's easy. But the longer you're married, the more work you have to put into the relationship. If you don't
Hmm.
go into a relationship understanding the needs of your wife, if a woman doesn't understand what makes her, what a husband needs, if you can't clarify these things, you're going to have a hard time. And one of the things that I teach in my classes is that, and I ask these women, 50 women in the room, who wants to be in love? And they all raise their hand. Okay, someone tell me what love means. Chirp, chirp, chirp. You know, you get chirps. Well, I don't understand. You want to be in love. If you can't define it, how do you know what it is? How do you define the term marriage? You don't have to use my definitions. When you get into a relationship and you're going to get married, if you can't have a common definition with the person you're going to marry, you're going to have a hard time.
Sure.
There's many women who are in their early 20s who don't love themselves, and they feel like if they find a guy to get married, that they'll be happy. Not only are they still unhappy, they're making somebody else unhappy. The relationship falls apart. You can get married with low self-esteem, and it can work, but it's much because, but really, you're gonna have a hard time loving somebody else if you don't love yourself. So
Sure.
self-esteem is a very major issue in today's world. If you want your kids to have a great marriage, you have to show them a great marriage, right? And that's why every decision you disagree.
Right. I have mixed feelings about that because,
Why is that?
well, because of the high divorce rate. I'm divorced and I want my kids to have a good marriage.
You
And
do.
actually, when I got divorced, because I couldn't control the pieces in my marriage that weren't working. I tried, I went to therapy many times. I really wanted it to work. I stayed 23 years, that's a long time. And I felt that the divorce actually was healthier for them in many, many ways, for them to see you don't stay in a terrible marriage to try and make it work for the kids. That's not healthy. They were watching two parents who couldn't agree on so many things, especially parenting. And the divorce didn't change that part. We still disagreed on parenting issues, but I got to have really wonderful discussions with them about healthy relationships, and my own learning and growth in that area has helped guide them. And I've been able to have incredible conversations with all three of my children. One of them is married and has three kids, and she is very aware of the importance of working things out with her husband. And
Yeah.
not because I don't want to have a divorce like you guys, because his parents are married and not the kind of marriage that they want to emulate either. You just talked about the small percentage of people who have good marriages. You can do your best, but if you're the only one in the marriage who's doing your best, that the kids are going to learn whatever they learn. And I think that the most important thing is to continue to have these ongoing conversations. What is love? What does it mean to work out conflict? What is it, how do you do this? How do you speak up? How do you not let somebody steamroll you in your marriage? These were the kinds of conversations I was having with my kids.
I'm gonna say that. again, what you have to get with the therapy. When do people, let me say it this way. The average Fortune 500 company in America spends $150 million a month on consultants. Why? Because it helps their bottom line. They make more money because of consultants. They help people to run their business. When do people who are married get consultants? When things are falling apart.
Yeah.
You get my point? Like, again, you went into a marriage probably. You probably didn't. I don't know if you read books on marriage. Did you understand? But I try to teach these men and women who are in their 20s and 30s and going into relationships what the four basics of a marriage are. And I call it pies: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. I said the most important for the woman is emotional, and for the most thing for a man is respect. I go, you think you're going to be loved as a man? You don't want to be loved. You want to be respected. When a man is not respected, that tears apart the relationship. And you might have a husband that sits around the couch all day, doesn't do it. I talk about all these things about keeping score. Like you start to keep score in a relationship, you're going to lose. And this is why marriage is not a partnership. Because once you look at it as a partnership, you start to keep score. And then nothing's going to work out because you cannot put a value on raising kids. You can't put a value in bringing home the money. Once you start keeping score in a relationship, you're going to lose. And this is why the definition of marriage, you have a definition of marriage before I give you mine?
You tell me yours. I could say a lot of things.
Right. Well, no, you have to be clear about this. It's a merger of two souls. And the reason why I use a merger because who do you love the most? I have people come to my house all the time. Coach, I'm ready to get married. I'm like, okay, who do you want to marry? Like, well, I want to be outgoing and cute and a learner, all these different things. I'm like, you're who are they describing? Usually themselves.
Right.
Because who they love the most? Themselves. But they don't need any more of them. They have enough of themselves. They need someone to complete them as a person. And this is why you look as a merger of two souls, you would never do anything to hurt yourself. Like, let me give an example. If you're going to have kids, let's say, for example, and I asked a younger person, are you going to love your kids? Like, of course I'm going to love my kids. And why are you going to love your kids? Well, they're part of me. I'm like, I guess you love your kids because they're part of you. And by the way, you rarely hear about parents divorcing their kids. Why
Mhm.
is that? Yet they don't choose their kids, yet you choose your spouse, you get divorced. Does that make sense whatsoever? Seriously, does that make sense? Not really. And the
Yeah.
reason why is because they don't understand marriage as a merger of two souls. If you look at your spouse as yourself, you would never do anything to hurt yourself. You wouldn't talk back to them. You wouldn't criticize it. This is me. This is my wife is me. And I don't want to do anything to hurt her because she is part of me. Just like when I have kids, my kids are, again, my kids aren't, they make mistakes, but I focus on their virtues. I focus on why I love them. Even you have parents who are parents of serial killers in America, and you ask the parents, they go, what do you think about your kid? They go, I despise what he did, but they still love them because they
Hmm.
still focus on what's good about them. And that's the definition of love. It's basically focusing on the virtues of another person and continuing to like you got married. There was something about your husband you loved.
Hmm.
What happened to those reasons?
I mean, I don't have
I,
that
I
much
mean, how do
time.
you? What happened? You stop focusing on those reasons, start focusing on those negative characteristics, which we all have. We all have negative traits, every single one of us, right? And you start focusing on the negative characteristics, and then you stop respecting him. And when a man does not feel respected, he stops giving you the four A's, which is attention, affection, appreciation, and awareness. And when he stops giving that to you, you stop respecting. And next thing you know, the physicality falls apart. And it's not a physical reason, it's an emotional reason, right? And this is why relationships fall apart. If you want to have great physicality in the relationships, you have to have a strong emotional connection. And when that, my one of my teachers tells me sometimes women will come up to her and say, it's Rebbetzin Palatnik, Lori Palatnik, I'm having a little bit of issue in my marriage. She's like, well, what's the problem? She goes, we haven't slept together in 2 years. Like, Houston, we have a problem. That's a major issue, right?
Hmm.
2 months is a major issue. And it's not usually not a physical problem, it's an emotional problem. And when men understand to show to wives the four A's, attention, affection, appreciation, awareness, and like I put my marriage on a pedestal and I put a fence around it. I make sure to protect that marriage because it's the most important thing in my life. And that's the way I look at marriage. And if you don't have this wisdom, everyone thinks they know how to be in a great relationship. You do too. You thought I'm 20, whatever we got married 25. I know how to do it. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. I like to say Everyone thinks they know what they're doing, but they don't have the wisdom. Wisdom is taking this knowledge and putting it into action. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
It might be interesting actually in a fruit salad, but no, yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes sense on a level. It feels like it's a little simplified for me because there's so many issues that happen in a relationship, and I understand
Sure.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, you can go in and think certain things, and people change. There's a crisis. There's something that brought out a part of your spouse that you didn't know
Sure.
existed,
Yeah.
their communication style. You know, there's so many things that we don't know, especially if we don't know a person for long enough time. And we don't always know that we're looking for the right things. You know,
Yeah.
I personally had given up hope. I was 28 and thought I would never meet anybody else. And this is a person who wanted to marry me. So, you know, it's a longer story, but anyway, we have come to the end. And I
Okay.
want to ask you the final question I ask everyone, which is, what are your final words of advice for anyone who wants to go on their last first date?
I would say the first thing is three things: to feel safe, to feel seen, and to feel like that you want to talk to this person again. If you can get through those three things, you feel safe, you feel like you're being seen, and you want to talk to this person again, I think that's a great first date.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So, Daniel, tell us your website.
Sure, it's coachratner.com, Ratner. And there's a Coach Ratner podcast. I wasn't planning to write Emotional Vampires. It just my wife came up with keepers, and so like I had to write it.
Yeah, well, it's a good book to put out there because so
Yeah.
many of us stay in these relationships that are draining and
Yes.
don't realize we have choices. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the information you shared today, Daniel.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thanks
Okay.
for listening, everybody. And if you love our show, please give us a high rating on Apple Podcasts, share it with your friends. You can also rate it on Spotify. And as always, here's to your last first date. If you are ready to get unstuck, gain new tools, become more empowered, and finally find your last first date, I'd love to talk to you. Fill out an application to be considered for a complimentary half-hour love breakthrough session at lastfirstdate.com/application.